There are many ghost stories associated with New York City, but one of the most famous is the story of the Lady in White, who is said to haunt the Hudson River Valley. The story goes that in the early 1800s, a young woman named Mary was engaged to a wealthy man from New York City. However, Mary fell in love with a poor artist who lived near her family's estate. Despite her family's disapproval, Mary and the artist secretly continued their relationship and planned to elope. One night, Mary dressed in her wedding gown and sneaked out of the house to meet her lover at the nearby riverbank. As they were rowing away in a small boat, they were caught in a storm and capsized. The artist managed to swim to shore, but Mary's heavy dress weighed her down and she drowned in the river. After her death, Mary's ghost began to appear on the riverbank and nearby roads, dressed in her wedding gown and searching for her lover. It is said that she often appears as a white figure, hence her nickname the Lady in White. Over the years, many people have reported seeing the Lady in White, particularly near the Sleepy Hollow area of the Hudson River Valley. Some have even claimed to have picked up a hitchhiking ghost who disappears from their car once they pass the spot where Mary drowned. While some skeptics have attributed the sightings to mist, fog, or other natural phenomena, many people believe that the Lady in White is a real ghost who still haunts the Hudson River Valley to this day. One of the most well-known ghost stories in New York City is that of the ghost of the Dakota Building. The Dakota Building is a historic apartment building located on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and it is famous for being the site of several unexplained occurrences and hauntings. The Dakota Building was constructed in the late 1800s and was originally designed as a luxury apartment building for the wealthy elite. However, over the years, it has become known for its haunted past, with many residents and visitors reporting strange sightings and encounters. Legend has it that the girl was the daughter of a former resident who died tragically in the building in the early 20th century. According to the story, the girl's spirit remains in the building to this day, and she can often be seen wandering the hallways, playing with toys, and occasionally appearing in the mirrors of the building's elevators. Some residents have also reported hearing the sound of a child's laughter or crying coming from empty rooms or hallways. Another ghostly presence said to haunt the Dakota Building is that of a former resident named John Lennon, the famous musician and member of the Beatles. Lennon lived in the building with his wife Yoko Ono in the 1970s, and it is said that his ghost still lingers in the apartment where he lived. Many people have reported hearing the sound of Lennon's music playing late at night, even though the apartment has been unoccupied since his death in 1980. Some residents have also reported seeing Lennon's ghost walking the halls or standing at the window of his former apartment, looking out over the city. While some skeptics dismiss these stories as mere folklore or imagination, many residents and visitors to the Dakota Building insist that it is indeed haunted by the spirits of its past residents. Whether or not these stories are true, the building remains one of New York City's most fascinating and eerie landmarks, shrouded in mystery and ghostly legends. One of the most chilling is the story of the House of Death, located in the West Village neighborhood of Manhattan. The house, located at 14 West 10th Street, was built in the 1850s and has a long and storied history. Over the years, it has been home to many notable residents, including the famous American author Mark Twain. However, the house is perhaps best known for the many ghostly apparitions that have been reported within its walls. Some say that the ghosts are the restless spirits of those who died within the house, while others believe that the house itself is cursed. One of the most famous ghosts associated with the house is that of a young girl named Janie. Janie is said to have died in the house in the early 1900s, and her ghost has been seen by many people over the years. Several former residents of the house have reported hearing the sound of a little girl's laughter, as well as footsteps running up and down stairs. Some have even claimed to have seen Janie's ghost standing at the foot of their bed at night. Another ghost that is said to haunt the house is that of a woman named Gertrude Treadwell. Gertrude lived in the house with her family for many years, and it is said that she still wanders the halls, dressed in her Victorian-era clothing. Some visitors to the house have reported feeling a cold breeze or a sudden drop in temperature when Gertrude's ghost is nearby. Others have claimed to see her ghostly apparition in the hallway, or to hear her voice whispering in their ear. But the most terrifying ghost associated with the house is perhaps that of a notorious serial killer named Joel Steinberg. Steinberg was a lawyer who lived in the house in the 1980s, and he was known for his violent and abusive behavior towards his girlfriend and their adopted children. In 1987, Steinberg was convicted of manslaughter for the death of his 6-year-old adopted daughter, and he served several years in prison before being released. However, many believe that his violent spirit still haunts the house, and that his ghost has been responsible for a number of frightening occurrences over the years. Some former residents of the house have reported feeling an overwhelming sense of fear or anger when they enter certain rooms, as if they are being watched by an unseen presence. Others have claimed to see ghostly apparitions of Steinberg, or to hear his voice whispering in their ear. Despite the many ghostly sightings and reports associated with the house, it remains a popular tourist attraction in New York City. Many people come to the house to take ghost tours, or to try to catch a glimpse of one of the many haunted spirits that are said to reside within its walls. Certainly, one of the most famous ghost stories in New York City is the tale of the Merchant's House Museum ghost, located in the heart of Manhattan. The Merchant's House Museum is a preserved 19th century townhouse that has been converted into a museum. It was built in 1832 by Seabury Treadwell, a wealthy merchant who lived there with his family for over 100 years. However, the Treadwell family was plagued by tragedy and death, and many believe that their spirits still haunt the house to this day. One of the most well-known ghost sightings at the Merchant's House Museum occurred in the late 1800s, after Seabury Treadwell had passed away. One of his daughters, Gertrude, had become engaged to a man that the family did not approve of. The night before the wedding, Gertrude's father appeared to her in a dream, warning her not to marry the man. Gertrude ignored the warning and went ahead with the wedding. But soon after, her husband died of mysterious causes. It is said that Gertrude's father's warning was a premonition of the tragedy that was to come. Over the years, many visitors to the Merchant's House Museum have reported ghostly sightings and unexplained occurrences. Some have seen apparitions of the Treadwell family, while others have heard strange noises or felt cold spots in certain areas of the house. In one famous incident, a visitor claimed to have felt a hand on her shoulder, even though no one was there. Perhaps the most chilling ghostly encounter at the Merchant's House Museum occurred in 1933, when a plumber working in the basement heard the sound of footsteps coming from a hallway. When he turned to see who was there, he saw a woman in a brown dress and a white bonnet walking toward him. The plumber tried to speak to her, but she vanished before his eyes. Later, he identified a portrait of Gertrude Treadwell as the woman he had seen in the basement. The Merchant's House Museum remains a popular destination for ghost hunters and those interested in the paranormal. While skeptics may dismiss the sightings as mere coincidence or imagination, many believe that the spirits of the Treadwell family still roam the halls of their former home. Certainly, one of the most famous ghost stories associated with New York City is a tale of the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, which actually takes place in the suburbs of Long Island. Raynham Hall is an historic mansion located in Oyster Bay, Long Island, which dates back to the 18th century. The home was originally owned by the Townsend family and was the site of some important events during the Revolutionary War. However, it is perhaps best known for the ghostly apparition that is said to haunt its halls. According to legend, the Brown Lady was actually a member of the Townsend family herself. Her name was said to be Dorothy Walpole, and she was the sister of the famous British politician Horace Walpole. However, Dorothy married poorly and was eventually ostracized from her family. She fell into a deep depression and eventually died in the mansion, where she is said to have been buried in a secret tomb. After her death, strange things began to happen in the house. Visitors reported seeing a ghostly woman in a brown dress wandering the halls, and sometimes even sitting at the top of a staircase. She was said to be a frightening figure, with glowing eyes and a gaunt face. Over the years, many people have tried to explain the phenomenon. Some have attributed it to natural phenomena, such as light refraction or hallucinations caused by mold or other toxins in the air. However, others believe that the Brown Lady is a real ghost who haunts Raynham Hall to this day. The story of the Brown Lady has been the subject of many books and articles and has inspired countless ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, while some people remain skeptical about the existence of ghosts. The story of the New Amsterdam Theater ghost, which is said to haunt the historic New Amsterdam Theater in Manhattan. The New Amsterdam Theater was built in 1903 and was one of the most popular theaters in New York City during the early 20th century. The theater was known for its lavish productions and its state-of-the-art technology, including electric lighting and air conditioning. However, during the 1930s, the theater fell into disrepair and was eventually abandoned. In the 1990s, the Disney company purchased the theater and restored it to its former glory. During the restoration process, workers reported strange occurrences, including unexplained noises and the sensation of being watched. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the theater involves a former Ziegfeld Follies girl named Olive Thomas. Olive was a beautiful young actress who performed at the New Amsterdam Theater in the early 1900s. She was known for her beauty and her scandalous behavior, including a highly publicized divorce and several affairs. In 1920, Olive traveled to Paris with her husband, the famous American playwright Jack Pickford. While in Paris, Olive accidentally ingested a lethal dose of mercury bichloride, which she mistook for medicine. She died several days later in a hospital in Paris. Despite the fact that Olive never performed at the New Amsterdam Theater after its opening in 1903, many people claim to have seen her ghost in the theater. Some say that she appears as a beautiful woman dressed in 1920s clothing, while others have reported hearing her voice or feeling her presence. In addition to Olive's ghost, there are many other reports of strange occurrences at the New Amsterdam Theater. Some workers have reported seeing a ghostly figure in a balcony, while others have reported hearing unexplained footsteps or seeing doors open and close on their own. While some skeptics have dismissed the reports as superstition or hallucination, many people believe that the New Amsterdam Theater is truly haunted by the ghosts of its past performers and patrons. Today, the theater is still a popular destination for tourists and theater enthusiasts who hope to catch a glimpse of the ghostly spirits that are said to haunt its halls. Certainly, here's a long and scary ghost story from New York that is sure to send shivers down your spine. In the late 19th century, there was a young woman named Elizabeth who lived in a small town in upstate New York. She was known throughout the town for her beauty and kind heart, and many men vied for her affection. One day, a wealthy and charming man named William arrived in town and immediately set his sights on Elizabeth. Despite her reservations, she was taken in by his charm and sophistication, and the two began a whirlwind romance. However, as time went on, Elizabeth began to notice strange things about William. He would disappear for long periods of time, and when he returned, he would be pale and sickly looking. Elizabeth tried to ignore her concerns, but they only grew stronger. One night, William asked Elizabeth to accompany him on a trip to New York City. She was hesitant, but he convinced her with promises of adventure and romance. Once they arrived in the city, he took her to a large, ornate mansion on the outskirts of town. As soon as they entered the mansion, Elizabeth felt a sense of dread wash over her. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, and she could hear chanting coming from a hidden room. William led her into the room, where a group of cloaked figures were gathered around the table. To Elizabeth's horror, she realized that the figures were performing a dark ritual, and that William was one of them. As the ceremony reached its climax, a dark figure materialized in the center of the room, and Elizabeth realized that they had summoned a demon. In a panic, Elizabeth fled from the mansion and back to the safety of her small town. However, she knew that the demon and its followers were still out there, and that they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. Over the years, Elizabeth became increasingly paranoid, and she began to see and hear things that no one else could. Eventually, she was committed to an asylum, where she spent the rest of her days in a state of terror and confusion. To this day, Some say that Elizabeth's spirit still haunts the mansion in New York City, and that the demon and its followers continue to practice their dark rituals. And while the truth of this story may never be known, it serves as a warning to all those who are tempted by the dark forces that lurk in the shadows. In the early 1900s, a man named Jacob lived in a small apartment in the Bronx with his wife and young daughter. Jacob was a struggling artist who had recently fallen on hard times and was struggling to make ends meet. One day, he received a letter from an anonymous benefactor offering to fund his artistic endeavors in exchange for a small favor. Desperate for the money, Jacob agreed to meet the benefactor at an old mansion on the outskirts of the city. When he arrived, he was greeted by a mysterious figure who led him to a room filled with strange artifacts and occult symbols. The figure revealed himself to be a powerful sorcerer who needed Jacob's help to summon a powerful demon. Jacob was terrified, but felt he had no choice but to cooperate. He performed the ritual, and to his horror, the demon appeared before him. The demon offered Jacob a deal. In exchange for his soul, he would grant him wealth and power beyond his wildest dreams. Jacob, driven by greed and desperation, accepted the offer. He returned home a changed man, with newfound wealth and success. However, his daughter began to notice that her father was acting strangely. He would disappear for long periods of time and would often return home covered in blood. One night, the daughter followed her father to the old mansion and witnessed a horrifying scene. Her father was performing dark rituals and sacrifices surrounded by demons and other supernatural creatures. Terrified, she fled the mansion and never saw her father again. Years later, the old mansion was purchased by a family who began to experience strange occurrences. They reported hearing unexplained noises, seeing shadowy figures, and feeling a sense of overwhelming dread. It was said that Jacob's spirit still haunted the mansion, seeking to continue his dark work and make new deals with unsuspecting victims.